The room was silent. Ryan sat on the floor, breathing slowly, staring at the words painted on his wall. Kill the weak. Awaken the alpha. It had been 3 days since that night. 3 days of waking up early, running until his legs shook, and eating plain food while everyone else indulged in comfort. His body was exhausted, but his mind had started to change. Still, when night came, the silence became loud again. The world was sleeping, but Ryan couldn't. He turned off the lights and lay down, but the darkness spoke louder than ever. It whispered old memories, the people who had laughed at him, the failures, the crushing weight of doubt. A small, insidious voice inside his head said, "You can't change. You'll quit again. You'll never be enough." He tried to ignore it, but it kept clawing its way back every time he slowed down, every time he took a single breath. He shot up in bed angry. "No," he said out loud, his voice cutting through the stillness. "I'm not that person anymore." The voice replied, cool and mocking, "Then prove it." Ryan froze. He felt his heartbeat accelerate, pounding in his chest. For a moment, it felt like there were two people inside him, one weak, one strong, locked in a battle for his soul. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He wasn't fighting the world. He was fighting himself. That night, Ryan made a choice. He grabbed a small bag, filling it with only a notebook, a water bottle, and a single hoodie. He left his phone on the table, a final connection to his old life severed. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and said, "No one is coming to save me. I'll save myself." Then, he walked out into the night. The next morning, he arrived at an old, isolated cabin just outside the city. It was silent, no signal, no noise, just the whisper of wind through the trees and the sharp bite of cold air. This would be his sanctuary, his crucible. He decided he would stay here for 30 days, alone. No phone, no friends, no distractions, only discipline, pain, and relentless focus. The first few days were brutal. He forced himself out of bed at 5 a.m., running through the dense woods, doing push-ups until his arms burned and his muscles screamed. He spent his hours reading about warriors, discipline, and the power of mindset. He felt pain in every fiber of his being, but with every drop of sweat, he felt the weakness being washed away. Sometimes at night, he would sit outside under a blanket of stars. The silence would return, and with it that dark, whispering voice. "Go home, Ryan, you've done enough. Rest. You'll never be great. Stop trying." But then something new began to rise from within, a deeper, stronger voice. "Keep going. The weak die here. The alpha is born here." Ryan closed his eyes, feeling the two sides of himself, the old and the new, clashing. Every workout, every cold morning, every agonizing repetition was one more blow against his own weakness. He started writing in his notebook every night. Day 1, still weak, but fighting. Day 5, pain is real, but so is the dream. Day 10, fear talks, but I don't listen anymore. By the second week, his body was transforming, leaner, harder, stronger. But more importantly, his mind was becoming sharp like a finely honed blade. He no longer waited for motivation, he manufactured it. Sometimes he would scream into the woods, not out of pain, but out of a newfound freedom. For the first time in his life, he wasn't lost. He knew exactly who he wanted to become. As the wind howled through the trees, he looked up at the vast, empty sky and said softly, "I will not die weak." The voice inside went quiet, not because it had disappeared, but because it was finally listening. The final line in his notebook that night read, "I hear the alpha now and he's waking up." Ryan didn't know it yet, but the next 30 days would not just change his body, they would change his entire destiny. The room was silent. Ryan sat on the floor, breathing slowly, staring at the words he had written on his wall. Kill the weak. Awaken the alpha. It had been 3 days since that night. 3 days of waking up early, running until his legs shook, and eating plain food while everyone else enjoyed comfort. His body was exhausted, but his mind had started to change. Still, when night came, the silence became loud again. The world was sleeping, but Ryan couldn't. He turned off the lights and lay down, but the darkness spoke louder than ever. It whispered old memories, the people who laughed at him, the failures, the self-doubt. A small voice crept into his head. You can't change. You'll just quit again. You'll never be enough. He tried to ignore it, but it kept coming back every time he slowed down, every time he took a breath. He sat up, angry. No, he said out loud. I'm not that person anymore. The voice replied, Then prove it. Ryan froze. He felt his heartbeat quicken. It felt like there were two people inside him, one weak, one strong, and in that moment he realized the truth. He wasn't fighting the world. He was fighting himself. That night, Ryan made a choice. He packed a small bag with a notebook, a water bottle, and one hoodie. He left his phone on the table. He looked himself in the mirror and said, No one is coming to save me. I have to save myself. Then he walked out into the night. The next morning, he arrived at an old isolated cabin outside the city. It was quiet, no signal, no noise, just trees and cold, crisp air. This would be his sanctuary of transformation. He decided he would stay here for 30 days. Alone. No phone, no friends, no distractions. Only discipline, pain, and focus. The first few days were brutal. He woke up at 5 a.m., ran through the woods, did push-ups until his arms burned, and read about warriors, discipline, and mindset. He felt pain in every single muscle, but every drop of sweat was washing away the weakness. Sometimes at night, he would sit outside under the stars. The silence would return, and the voice, that dark, whispering voice, would come back. Go home, Ryan. You've done enough. Just rest. You'll never be great. Stop trying. But then another voice began to rise, deeper, stronger. Keep going. The weak die here. The alpha is born here. Ryan closed his eyes. He felt the two sides of himself, the old and the new, locked in a battle. Every workout, every cold morning, every drop of sweat was another punch thrown at his weakness. He started writing in his notebook every night. Day 1, still weak, but fighting. Day 5, the pain is real, but so is the dream. Day 10, fear still talks, but I don't listen anymore. By the second week, his body was changing, leaner, harder, stronger. But more than that, his mind was becoming sharp as a blade. He no longer waited for motivation. He created it. Sometimes he would scream into the woods, not out of pain, but out of freedom. For the first time, he wasn't lost. He knew exactly who he wanted to become. As the wind blew through the trees, he looked up and said softly, I will not die weak. The voice inside went quiet. Not because it disappeared, but because it was finally listening. The final line in his notebook that night read, I hear the alpha now, and he's waking up. Ryan didn't know it yet, but the next 30 days would not just change his body, they would change his entire destiny. The first rays of sunlight touched the cabin roof. Ryan is already awake. There's no alarm, no phone, no noise, just silence and a sense of purpose. He glances at his notebook. Day 11, the war continues. Every morning starts the same way. Cold water splashed on his face, a deep, centering breath, and a whisper to himself, kill the weak, awaken the alpha. The first 10 days were designed to break his body. Now the next 20 will test his very soul. His day begins with a long run through the forest. The air is cold, his legs feel like lead, but he refuses to stop. Every single step, every breath feels like a small, hard-won victory. His heart pounds like a war drum. One beat for the pain, one beat for the strength growing within. Back at the cabin, he immediately drops to the ground and starts his push-ups. When he began, he could barely manage 20. Now he pushes past 100, screaming through the burn. But his scream isn't one of weakness. It's the sound of rebirth. By noon, the training shifts from the physical to the mental. He sits down, opening a book on the mindset of warriors. He takes notes, repeating words that resonate deep inside him. Discipline, control, hunger. Afterward, he meditates. At first, his thoughts were a chaotic storm, but slowly, day by day, he's learned to quiet them. He's learning to control his breathing, his focus, his mind. As evening approaches, the battle changes. The enemy isn't the cold, or the hunger, or the physical pain anymore. The real enemy is himself. That weak, insidious voice sometimes returns. "Why are you even doing this?" it whispers. "No one cares. You could be back home, comfortable." Ryan just smiles. He doesn't fight the voice anymore. He listens, and then answers quietly, "That's exactly why I'm here." He's learned a fundamental truth. Comfort is a poison. Weakness is the real disease. So he fights every single day like a soldier on a mission. He eats only clean, whole foods. He stopped thinking about the end results. His focus is purely on the effort, right here, right now. Pain has become his greatest teacher. The days blur together. Day 15, day 20, day 25. The man who once doubted himself now stands taller, stronger, calmer. He doesn't check the time. He doesn't count likes or views online. He counts reps, breaths, and moments of profound silence. One night, doing push-ups in the dark, he feels his arms shaking violently. His body is screaming at him to quit. But then, something strange happens. He hears that deep, powerful voice again, but this time, it's not separate from him. It's coming from within. "You're not weak anymore, Ryan. You're changing." He pushes harder. Tears of exertion mix with sweat. The pain transforms into pure power. He stands up, breathing heavily, and looks at his faint reflection in the dark window. For the first time, he doesn't see a broken man staring back. He sees a warrior. That night, he writes in his notebook, "Day 26, I no longer chase strength, I am strength." Day 27, the Alpha is not coming. He's already here. On the 30th day, he wakes before sunrise. He stands outside, shirtless, feeling the cold wind on his skin. He closes his eyes and whispers, 30 days of war, 30 days of pain. I am not the same man." The sun slowly rises, its golden light touching his face. And in that light, Ryan smiles. Not with pride, but with a deep sense of peace. He knows this battle isn't over. The real world is waiting for him. The people who doubted him, the challenges, the constant noise. But now he's ready. The weak man is gone. The Alpha is alive. He packs his bag, looking one last time at the words scrawled on his wall. "Kill the weak. Awaken the Alpha." Then he whispers, "I'm coming back." The city looked the same. Same traffic, same noise, same faces. But Ryan was not the same. It had been 30 days since he left. 30 days of silence, pain, and transformation. Now, he was walking through the same streets that once made him feel small. But this time, every step felt heavy with power. His hoodie was up, his face calm, his eyes sharp. He wasn't rushing. He was moving with purpose. The weak Ryan who cared about what others thought was gone. This Ryan walked like he owned every single moment. When he reached his apartment, he opened the door slowly. The same messy room greeted him. But instead of feeling tired, he smiled. Because this was not a reminder of failure. It was a reminder of where the Alpha was born. He unpacked his bag and placed his notebook on the desk. He looked at the first page. It read, "Day 1, still weak, but fighting." Then he turned to the last page. Day 30. I am not the same man. Ryan closed the notebook and whispered to himself, "Now, the real war begins." In the days that followed, he returned to his routine, but with a fire inside. He trained harder than ever before. He applied for new jobs, sent out proposals, and finally started the small side business he had dreamed up months ago, but never had the courage to begin. And people started noticing. Old friends texted him, surprised. "Bro, what happened to you? You look different." Ryan didn't explain. He just smiled and replied, "Discipline happened." One afternoon while walking down the street, he saw someone familiar. Daniel, his old rival. The same guy who once laughed at his failures. Daniel smirked, stepped closer, and said, "Ryan, long time, man. Still chasing those little dreams of yours?" Ryan didn't react. He just looked him directly in the eyes, completely silent. The silence was powerful. It made Daniel uncomfortable. He laughed again, but this time his voice shook slightly. "You think you're better than everyone now?" Ryan finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. "No, I'm just better than the man I used to be." Then he turned and walked away. No anger, no ego, just pure control. Later that night, Ryan trained harder than ever. Every push-up, every squat reminded him, the alpha doesn't talk much. He proves himself through action. As sweat dripped down his face, he looked in the mirror and whispered, "The weak one would have argued, the alpha walks away." He felt powerful, not because of his muscles, but because of his self-control. The next morning, he got an unexpected call. A company that had once rejected him wanted to meet again. They had seen his new project online, the same one he built quietly while others doubted him. The manager said, "We think you might be the right person for a leadership position." Ryan didn't jump with excitement. He just said calmly, "Tell me when to come." He ended the call and sat down. His hands were steady, but his eyes were burning with intensity. This was it, the test of everything he had built inside himself. That night, he opened his notebook again and wrote one final line. "Tomorrow, I face the world that once broke me." He looked up and said softly, "Let them see the difference. Let them see the alpha." The war outside was about to begin, but this time, he wasn't going to lose. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that will help you unlock your own inner strength. The morning light fell across Ryan's desk. His suit was ready. His notebook was closed. Today wasn't just another day. It was the test. He stood in front of the mirror. The reflection staring back at him looked calm, focused, and sharp. But inside, his heart was racing, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. This was it. The same company that had rejected him months ago. The same place that told him he wasn't good enough. He adjusted his tie, the silk cool against his fingers, and whispered to his reflection, "Let them see who I've become." As he walked through the glass doors of the building, memories flooded his mind. The cold sting of the rejection email, the imagined laughter, the heavy weight of humiliation, but this time he didn't walk like a victim returning to the scene of the crime. He walked like a soldier entering the battlefield, head held high, shoulders squared. The manager, Mr. Collins, looked up from his desk and offered a polite, practiced smile. "Ryan, welcome back. We've been watching your work. We have a new challenge for you." Ryan simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'm listening." Collins leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "We need someone to lead a failing project. Everyone believes it can't be saved. You have 4 weeks. The room went silent. 4 weeks, no guarantees, no help. He could almost hear that old insidious voice in his head whispering, "You'll fail again, you can't handle this." But another voice rose to meet it. Deeper, stronger, forged in discipline. "This is your test. Don't run. Dominate." Ryan met the manager's gaze and said with unshakable certainty, "I'll take it." The next days were pure chaos. The team was broken, their spirits shattered. The project was hemorrhaging time and money. The atmosphere was thick with apathy. People were unmotivated, lazy, and ready to quit. Ryan didn't shout. He didn't complain. For 2 days he just observed, a silent presence in the storm. Then, on the 3rd morning, he gathered everyone. "Listen," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. "We're not here to survive. We're here to win. You can stay weak and give up, or stand strong and rise with me." Something in his voice, steady, fearless, cut through their cynicism. They had never seen leadership like this before. Ryan didn't just talk. He led from the front. He worked beside them through long nights and into the early mornings. When others grew tired, he kept going. When someone expressed doubt, he reminded them, Discipline is stronger than doubt. But success wasn't a straight line. Halfway through, the systems failed, deadlines slipped, and the team started losing faith all over again. One night, Ryan sat alone in the office, the glow of the monitor illuminating his exhausted face. His eyes were red, his hands shaking slightly. That weak voice returned, soft and tempting. You tried. You did your best. Maybe this isn't meant for you. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness he remembered the cold mornings, the pain, the silent battles he had fought with himself. He whispered into the empty room, "The Alpha never quits." He stood up, stretched his arms wide, and returned to the keyboard. That night, he worked for 12 hours straight. No sleep, no excuses. By sunrise, the problem was solved. When his team arrived, they found him still working, his eyes tired but burning with an inner fire. "How long have you been here?" one of them asked in awe. Ryan smiled faintly. "Long enough to make progress." From that day forward, the tide began to turn. The team started believing, not just in the project but in themselves. The project began to surge forward. Even senior management started to notice. Ryan didn't celebrate. He didn't post his small victories online. He just kept going, focused, calm, and relentlessly disciplined. Finally, on the last day of the 4th week, the project was complete. It wasn't just successful, it was perfect. Mr. Collins came to his desk, extending a hand. "You did the impossible," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "How did you do it?" Ryan looked straight into his eyes, his gaze unwavering. "I killed my weakness." That night, Ryan went home, opened his notebook, and wrote a new entry. "The Alpha is tested in fire. The weak man burns. The Alpha survives." He closed the notebook and whispered to the quiet room. This was just the beginning. The war inside him wasn't over, but now he knew he could win. The office lights were off, but Ryan was still there. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. The room was quiet, except for the sound of his own heartbeat and the ticking clock. He stared at the computer screen. Another project, another deadline, another challenge. The success from his last win had made him a hero in the company. But with success came pressure. Emails, calls, meetings. Everyone wanted a piece of him. People now expected him to be perfect, flawless, a machine. But inside, Ryan was fighting a silent war. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt that old, familiar feeling creeping back in. Doubt. He had been running on pure discipline, on sheer willpower, but now his mind was tired. A voice returned, whispering in his ear, "You've done enough. Slow down. You're not a machine." He tried to block it out, to push it away, but the voice was louder this time. Familiar, sneaky, almost friendly. He stood up and walked to the window. The city lights glowed below. It was beautiful, but it was also a reminder of how much further he had to climb. He whispered to himself, "You're not here to stop now. You're here to rise higher." But deep down, he could feel something inside was starting to break again. The next morning, his routine was the same. Push-ups, running, a cold shower. But his mind wasn't there. It wasn't focused. He kept replaying scenarios of failure. What if everything he'd built, everything he'd sacrificed for, came crashing down around him? At work, people noticed he was quieter. His team respected him, but they couldn't see the storm raging inside his head. Late that night, Ryan sat alone in his room, notebook open, pen in hand. He stared at a blank page. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't know what to write. He whispered into the silence, "What's happening to me?" And then an answer came, not from that weak voice of doubt, but from a deeper place within. "You're tired, not weak, but even warriors need to reset." He took a deep breath. For years he had fought his perceived weakness with anger, with aggression, but now he needed something more powerful, balance. The next day, Ryan did something he hadn't done in months. He took a walk. No headphones, no goals, no plan. He just walked. He watched people laughing, kids playing, strangers just living. Living without the crushing pressure he felt every second. He smiled. For a fleeting moment, he felt human again. He realized something profound. True strength wasn't just about pushing harder. It was about knowing when to breathe. That night, he meditated in silence. He let every thought come and go, without judgment. He didn't fight them this time. He listened to his fear, his pain, his ambition, and in that silence he finally understood. The alpha, the leader, wasn't about being hard and unyielding every single second. It was about being in control, especially when the storm raged inside. A few days later, his focus returned. He went back to work, but he was different, sharper. This time he wasn't fueled by anger or pressure. He was fueled by clarity. When his team faced a new crisis, they looked to him in panic. But Ryan stood calm. "We'll fix it," he said, his voice steady, one problem at a time. No shouting, no fear, just pure, unwavering confidence. And just like that, they solved it. His boss, Mr. Collins, looked at him and said, "You've changed, Ryan. You don't just lead now, you inspire." Ryan smiled faintly. That's what happens when the war inside becomes peace. That night, he opened his notebook again. This time, the words flowed easily. The strongest man is not the loudest. He's the one who controls his silence. He looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. The weak man reacts, the alpha responds. He closed the notebook and whispered, "The storm is over, but the journey isn't." The next sunrise would bring new challenges, but Ryan wasn't afraid anymore. Because now, the alpha didn't just live in his body. He ruled his mind. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe for more content that helps you master your own inner world. Thank you for watching. The morning sun rose quietly, painting the sky gold. A man stood on the rooftop of his building, the wind brushing against his face. He closed his eyes, taking a slow, deep breath. It had been a long journey, from failure to fire, from weakness to war. He opened his eyes and whispered, "The weak man died. The alpha stands." Months had passed since his transformation began. He had become something people couldn't quite define, calm yet powerful, humble yet fearless. He wasn't chasing success anymore. Success was chasing him. His team had grown stronger under his leadership. Projects that once seemed impossible were now succeeding one after another. Even his rivals began to show respect, some in silence, others with a hint of envy. But he didn't care about the fame or the recognition. His true victory wasn't in numbers on a spreadsheet or awards on a shelf. It was in the mirror, in the eyes of the man who had once been too afraid to even try. One evening, he was invited to speak at a seminar about discipline and mindset. Hundreds of people sat before him, young, restless, and searching for direction. As he walked onto the stage, the lights were bright, but his heart was steady. He looked out at the crowd and said softly, "A few months ago, I was broken. I had nothing, no job, no confidence, no strength. I thought my life was over. But I learned something powerful. You can't destroy a man who decides not to quit." The room fell silent. Every word landed with impact. He continued, "Do you think the alpha is someone born strong? No. The alpha is forged. In pain, in silence, in failure. Every single morning when you wake up, you have two choices. Stay weak or rise stronger. I chose strength." The audience leaned forward, hanging on his every word. You don't need other people to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself enough to start. Because once you start, the world has no choice but to notice. He paused, looked directly at the crowd, and said the line that changed his entire life. "Kill the weak, awaken the alpha." The audience erupted, clapping, cheering, shouting his name. But he didn't smile out of pride. He smiled because he knew that somewhere in that crowd, another broken soul had just made the decision to rise. Later that night, after the event, he walked home alone. The streets were quiet again, just like they were on the night his journey began. He passed the same places, the same lights, but this time everything looked different. He wasn't the boy who was lost. He wasn't the man who doubted himself. He was the Alpha, calm, focused, and unshakable. As he reached his apartment, he saw the old words still written on his wall. Kill the weak. Awaken the Alpha. He smiled and whispered, "Mission complete." But then he added, "Now, it's time to help others awaken theirs." The scene shifts to a new sunrise. He's training again, barefoot, sweat dripping, heart steady. The voice in his head, the Alpha, speaks softly. "You started alone. You fell. You broke. But you didn't stay there. You stood up. You fought. You became everything they said you couldn't." He looks up at the sky. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join the Alpha Instinct. Let us know in the comments what your first step will be. We'll see you in the next one.